Hey, good afternoon. My name is James Cox, and I've been asked to come here today to speak to you a little bit about how to hold a productive meeting. There are many ways to do it, and we've all been involved in meetings of some kind, whether it's just an HR training meeting, a school-related meeting, or a business-related meeting talking about how to close the next sale. There's a few tips and a few roadblocks and a few things that I'm going to go through today to talk to you a little bit about how you can overcome those. I've got a short little video clip that is pretty funny, I think, and may actually help you put little things into perspective. So sit back and watch the clip. It's only going to last about a minute or so.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know.
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
Yeah, so kind of the point of that, you may be wondering, what does herding cats and the cowboys have to do with presentation or any kind of sales meeting or running and holding a productive meeting? Well, at the end of the day, it can be like herding cats. You've got multiple personalities, conflicting schedules, just different things that can diversify your entire room. So when you're trying to get everybody focused into one particular direction, everything can go askew. You're having people go here, people go there, conversations, etc. So I'm going to walk through a few basic tips to talk about what you can do to overcome those. What we're going to be talking about in a nutshell today, tips to bringing in the herd. Introduce a parking lot. We'll talk a little bit about how you can use a parking lot system to save off questions and really make use of your time. Distractors, is it a friend or a foe? We'll talk about how they can be a benefit or they can be the downfall of a good presentation. Doing your homework. It's important, right? We all have homework post-school and throughout the rest of our life, but you may just not think of it as homework. Just make sure you're knowledgeable. And be relevant at the end of the day. We've got to stay relevant to what we're talking about, who we're talking to, just to make sure that we're staying engaged with our audience. And beyond that, closure. It sounds simple. At the end of your presentation, you've got to have some sort of closure. So the next thing we're going to talk about is, where did I park? So you may have heard the term parking lot and you may not, just depend on the genre that you're in. The term parking lot is used for, it's a virtual parking lot basically. What it is you can have a dry erase board, you can have memo notes, post-it notes, things like that, that you can use these tools to stave off questions that may derail a conversation. Really the quickest way to lose control of a meeting are interruptions. You may be covering a topic that hits home with somebody, or they might feel the need to interrupt your material with a detailed question. Well, instead of staying on task and staying within an allotment period of time, you get derailed really quickly with these specific questions. So one way to avoid that and really bring everything in, but yet still keep the audience engaged, is to create a parking lot. In the beginning, just let everybody know, we're going to get through a lot of material today. There's going to be a lot of questions. At some point, you're going to have questions that you may want to answer. We're going to have a specific time set aside for those. Write them down on a post-it note, stick them in the parking lot, and then make sure, keynote is here, make sure to circle back to those notes. Next we move on to something shiny. Who's something shiny? Squirrel. you know, it's so easy to be prepared for your presentation and ask the crowd to park and lot the questions, right? You're going to have, you know, we've got the questions sitting over here. They've been very attentive. Everyone's following directions. But that should be it, right? We should have the ability to move on with the conversation and our presentation and move on. Nope. That's anything can derail that. An example of that would be somebody opening up a door, somebody's cell phone going off. Any little thing can derail that. So you can actually lose the audience and lose your conversation by allowing it to be derailed by distractions. So one of the things that you can do is actually use this to your benefit. One of the distractions that you could use in your presentations is taking an object, let's say a stress ball, for example, and pitching it to somebody that's sitting in the front row or somebody that you may have a question to. Keeping your audience engaged is really important. So if it's a matter of just leaning forward a little bit to ask them a question, tossing them a stress ball to make sure that they're capturing it and are engaged, little things like that as a distraction, but it's a controlled distraction, can actually bring home and help you really close the deal, if you will. Next, we move on to doing your homework. Short little note here, something a little funny from SpongeBob.
Now let's see how it looks so far. The time.
So, for example, he didn't do his homework. Started out, didn't really know what he was going to say, and that was it. Just slammed the paper down and moved on. One of the things that you must do, and is really critical, and whether it's a sales call, whether it's an operations meeting, it really is critical to do your homework. And by that I mean look for related articles on the audience, for example, or if it's a sale. Talk about, hey, you guys went through a recent merger. How did that affect you? Be cognizant of who, the bottom line is who's in the room. Who did you invite to the meeting? Who's here? And not only who's here, what do you do for the company? You may have somebody sitting in a front row or a table sitting right there in the front asking a question. You have no clue who that person is. And that person could be the CEO. It could be the principal of a school you're giving a presentation to. It could just be an admin. You don't really know. So it's really important to have your ducks in a row, if you will. Find out as much as you can going into the meeting. And I know that can be difficult sometimes. But what you really want to do is ask whoever's setting up the meeting, whoever's helping you coordinate, talk to them. Get as much research done as you can. And when it stops short of, okay, well now I know who's in attendance, I've got a general idea of what they do for the organization, then take it a step further. Go online, Google it. Maybe call or reach out to one or two of the other people that are in the presentation that you know will be there. Ask them to participate. Reach out to outside organizations or competition. If you happen to be given a presentation on competing print customer, if you will, say, well, hey, reach out to a competing organization. There's a direct competitor of them, and ask them, how do you guys see the market? What do you know about the company that you're going to be presenting to? And you'll find out a lot about that. So when you actually show up, you seem knowledgeable, you seem relevant, you seem on top of your game, and at the end of the day, you're going to bring some sort of value to them. That's really going to lead us into the next step. So next we're going to talk about, well, I just mentioned it. We're going to talk about being relative, staying relevant, be engaging. So it's limited in the space that we have as far as in video to stay engaging with whoever I'm speaking to, right? So what you need to do is you stay engaging as much as possible. Say hi, use first names, use last names. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for coming in and sitting down with us today. I appreciate your admin, Linda Jones. Thank you for being here. Keep eye contact. Shake hands. Use the distractions that we talked about earlier. Pitch something to them. Just overall, just talk to them about about the subject and make it meaningful for them. Don't talk in generalities. We're talking in general about a presentation today, but it's specific to a few related items, right? So you want to avoid certain catchphrases like sometimes, in general. you don't really offer any value when you do that. So these people have taken their time out of their day to come down, sit with you for a half hour, hour, 2 hours, whatever it is, and you want to bring some sort of value to them. I spent my time wisely doing this. You won't be able to get 100% of people 100% of the time, but you will get a lot of the audience coming in, at least something relevant to them, and just stay on task. We've talked about parking lot questions, using visual aids, distractions, and making sure you do homework. Make sure stay on task, and that could be as simple as, hey, before we get started, we have an hour set aside for this period of time for this presentation. Is that going to work for everyone in here? And when you do that, and we agree that everything is correct moving forward, make sure that you stay on task and make sure the message stays relevant for them. Next, we bring up closure. We all need closure, right? So that is, like this, one of my favorite movies is Glengarry Glen Ross. I happen to be in sales, so put the coffee down. Coffee is for closers. You've spent all this time doing your homework, staying on task, getting everyone in the room, being engaging, being relevant, doing all these things. And what's one of the biggest mistakes that we do at the end of either a sale or just a presentation in general? We don't ask for the next step. We don't get buy-in. Let's say you're an operations manager and you're talking to your group about HR materials. You sat down, you presented to them, you know who's here, you know what the requirements are for them to move forward, but you don't, by the end of the presentation, you don't actually ask them to do anything or accomplish anything. Did you fill out the paperwork? Make sure when you leave here to sign this or have this filled in. So you can go through all this presentation and not really have any kind of closure. So that's something to really keep in mind, and especially this is a no-brainer for a salesperson. You've done all this work, you've gotten cleaned up, you've driven down to a customer, you've finally gotten 20 or 30 minutes to set aside for that meeting, and when you leave, a lot of salespeople just don't ask for what's the next step. Whether that's, hey, can we have a date set up for the next meeting? Next time when I show up, what are the odds of us getting the CEO involved in this? Let's go ahead and set that up while we're sitting here today. Things like that. Closure, 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 and that could be for next steps. That could just be for the sale. That's just getting some sort of buy-in is really what you're looking for. Next, we're going to move on just to wrapping it up. This is a very brief conversation, but there's a few tools that I've provided you with today that I hope will allow you to have a more productive meeting moving forward. Today we've learned about controlling your meeting using parking lots, writing down sticky notes, tabling those questions, making sure that you have some sort of structure whenever you start out. Overcoming and utilizing distractions. Hey, cell phone went off. Make sure we have all of those cell phones turned off before we start the meeting, just as a common courtesy. We also talked about using those distractions as a benefit. Using a stress ball, keeping somebody engaged, keeping it lively, keeping it interactive. Don't just preach to your audience. The importance of doing your homework. Make sure that you do your homework. Know what you're going to be talking about. Have some sort of game plan. Be relevant with that information. That's vital too. You can know as much as you want about the company, but if you don't engage and work that process through, then it really doesn't mean much at the end of the day. And attaining closure. Again, this sounds like an extremely basic step, but it's overlooked because a lot of times when people think closure, they think it's just for a salesperson. Oh, he asked for the sale. Oh, well, he's asked for a next date. Closure could be anything, and then especially operations teams, they don't see the closure as even being an option. So one of the, just going through the steps, just make sure that we've done all this, you've utilized your time, you're relevant, you've overcome distractions, your parking lot, it's just a structured overall environment that you're keeping everybody in. You've remained relevant, and at the end of the day, just keep reminding yourself that this appointment is not about you. You don't need to be overly critical of yourself. There's going to be mistakes. We're all human. We're all sitting in a room. As my dad used to say, is that there's the reason they put erasers on pencils. So just don't be as focused on your message per se, but just what value are you bringing? Did we have a nice structured meeting? Did we keep it distraction free? Was I relevant to my customer? And did we gain some sort of closure at the end of the meeting? So to wrap it up, I definitely appreciate your time this afternoon. and there's a funny little little cartoon at the end. But basically, the point is, go out there, schedule that meeting, and just take what take from these tips what you will, and make sure you have a valuable meeting. Thank you for your time. Have a great afternoon. Thanks again.